In the last lesson, we set up a new repository on GitHub, we created a commit on our local machine, and we pushed that commit to GitHub. This means that moving forwards, any commits that we make to this project, as long as you made the repository public, will be viewable by just about anybody else that wants to go and have a look at them. This means that people can come and look at your code, give you code reviews, they can have a look for any issues, if there's any problems with things that you've written, they'll be able to see it and they'll be able to post about it on your repo. So you can leverage the power of the open source community, which is really nice. Now, one small change I'd like to make to this little function that we've already written here in JavaScript is I'd like to output the name of someone. Maybe just, me. I want to output my name into the console. So to do that, I'm just going to declare a new variable, just going to call it name, and instead of hello world, I'm going to say hello name. So now that's written, we can be sure that that works. It's time to open up our console. If we type git status, do git add index.js, because there's new changes that have been made to this file. If you want to view the changes, by the way, you can do git diff, and that will show you what's actually changed inside the file. The diffs might look a little bit intimidating at first, but don't worry, too much about the syntax of it. Basically, anything that's new is in green, and anything that's been removed is in red. So now, if we add the file, so git add index.js, now if we do a commit, output git commit output a name in the console.log. So now we'll go and push this up to GitHub, and we have a problem. What's happened here is that the remote, so our repo on GitHub, has actually rejected this change. And if we look through the error message, we'll see that updates were rejected because the remote contains work that you do not have locally. So the first thing that we should do here is we should go and have a look at GitHub and we should see what's changed. So now looking at GitHub, we can see that another commit has been added to the repo. It was done 8 minutes ago. It looks like this is one that I've made, add comment to method. And if we have a look at this commit, we can see that it looks like I added a comment, just documenting what this function actually does. And that's neat and all, but this is actually stopping us from pushing our code back up to GitHub. So what do we do? Well, the first thing that we need to do is we need to pull this change down onto our machine so we have the work that's from the remote. In order to replicate this scenario, I made this commit directly on the web by editing the file in GitHub. I didn't edit it on my local machine, so my local machine didn't actually get this commit. This was done directly on GitHub in the browser. But the same thing can happen if you're working with other people and other people push to your branch. If they've pushed a commit on top of your work and you don't have that work, you can't actually push anything else to that branch until you have their work. So now we'll head back into VS Code. We'll open up our terminal. And the way that we'll fix this is we'll do git pull. Now I must admit, I wasn't actually planning on showing you this particular quirk of working with Git in this particular video. I was going to leave this until later on in the series, but it's actually a good thing that this has happened because now I can show you, as well as how to pull work down that other people have pushed to your branch, I can also show you one of the consequences of doing that quite often, which is merge conflicts. Now in a nutshell, a merge conflict occurs when both people have modified the same file and the changes are happening roughly at the same portion of the file. So the comment that was added on GitHub has actually pushed the line numbers of each of the lines of code down. But because I've modified those lines of code, Git doesn't quite know what to do with it. So it flags it as a merge conflict and it expects me to resolve it. So if we close our terminal, if you're using VS Code in particular, it will actually highlight the merge conflicts like this. And it will actually show you them in blocks and it will color code them, so it's a lot easier to see what's actually happened. It'll also give you a couple of suggestions up here about what you can actually do with it. And if you're not using VS Code, if you're using something like maybe Notepad++, your merge conflict will look a little bit something like this. So if we just cat the raw contents of index.js, we can see that Git has added these markers here. So it's got these greater than signs, equal signs, and less than signs. So if you're wondering what this head up here and this hash down here mean, these are the commit markers. So these are the points in history where things have been changed. If we were to go and punch this into GitHub, in fact, we'll do it now. We'll take this commit and up here at the top, we'll remove that and we'll just paste that in. And that brings us back to this commit. So that's the commit hash. That shows you the individual commit that has conflicted here. And then the head is where the head currently is. So that's wherever your history was when you pulled down this change. So for us, that was the commit just before this new one. And just for the benefit of anyone who's not using VS Code, I will resolve this without using these tools up here. So the first thing that we need to establish is what we actually need to keep. So we want this bit of code up here. So we want the function declaration, we want this variable, and we want this console.log. That would mean that these two parts down here, this console.log and this closing brace, aren't needed anymore. So we'll remove that. And we'll remove the markers that get put in there as well. And now we just need to remove this marker up here as well. So the code that we end up with is the code that we modified. So we've got this variable in here with a name, and we've got the console.log, which has been changed from world to the name variable. And we've also got the comment that was added on GitHub outside of our local machine. So now the merge conflict has been just about resolved. The actual code has been resolved anyway. So we need to hop back into our terminal and we need to tell Git that we've fixed up the file. So if you go into Git status, it'll now tell you that you've got unmerged paths, and it'll show you which paths haven't been merged. When Git says it has an unmerged path, it basically means that there's sort of two separate trajectories of the code almost. So in this instance, we were going from this commit, the add the main JavaScript entry point we did in the last video, and we've now got this commit that we've made, but there's also another commit that's in the same place as this commit on the remote. So Git needs to figure out what order to put things in. Clear that and we do git status again. Now we can have a quick look at index.js. So if we do git diff index.js, it should show us what we've actually changed. So we can see now that we've got the comment, which was added on GitHub, and we've got our code that we've just changed on our machine here. And that's good. That's what we want. So now we'll add index.js. Just check the status again. And I'll see that everything looks fine. Whenever you run git status, by the way, if it doesn't look quite right, just make sure you give it a good read through. So we'll see here that it's telling us we've got one different commit each, respectively. So that's the remote and our local machine. This is basically what happens when the two fall out of sync. And it does say down here as well that all conflicts have been fixed, but you are still merging. Use git commit to conclude the merge. So if we just do git commit, now if we save this, this, by the way, is the alternative view of git commit. If you don't pass your commit message with the -m and the quote marks, it'll take you into whatever the default editor is on your machine to go and type out a commit in this full view. So it shows you all the things that have, all the files that were in the commit. In this case, it was some conflicts with index.js. And it also gives you a bunch of comments with a bunch of instructions and a bunch of hints. In this case, what we're doing is we're merging the changes that have been made to the upstream into our local machine. So we'll just save that and we'll close. Now if we do a git status, we'll see that we're ahead by 2 commits. So if we have a log, have a look in the log and see what's there. So now if we have a look at the commits and see where we are, we've got this commit here that we did in the last video. This was adding the first commit to the project, the main JavaScript entry point. We've got this one here, which is add comment to method. That's the one that was made on GitHub outside of our local machine. The next one, which is the one that we made on our local machine just now, output a name in the console log. And now we've got a merge commit, which merges everything back together again. So we are 2 commits ahead of the remote. Now, if you remember in the last video, I told you about these markers, basically these pointers about where we are. This is going to make a bit more sense now, because if you have a look at this one here in red, this commit was the one that was made on GitHub outside of our machine. And it says origin master in the location pointer at the end of it. The origin is the remote, so it always follows the syntax of remote / branch name. So this change is where the origin remote, the remote called origin, is at on branch master. And then if we have a look at this one up here, we've got head master. So this is where our local machine is right now. This is the head. This is the very top of our commit history on our local machine on branch master. You'll get a feel for it as you move forwards. Anyway, what we need to do now is we need to just check the status again, and then we just need to push this up. Now if we go and check GitHub, have a look at the repo, we'll see that there's now 4 commits. We've got the add main JavaScript entry point from yesterday. We've got the commit to method, which was the comment to method, sorry, which was added on GitHub just a couple of minutes ago. We've got the output name in the console log, which we just did on our local machine, and we've got the merge branch master, which we just put together on a local machine as well.